Okay, Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf tet. We start on the new Mishnah on top of Talmud Aleph. It's a slightly peculiar Mishnah, as you'll see. Well, let's just jump in and take a look. Okay, so Knidrei Rishonim. If somebody says this is understood to be an issue about Yadot, a continuation of the Yad discussion. If somebody says that this should be forbidden to me, like the Nedarim of this should be on me. We'll see exactly what they said, but they said some type of a statement like that would be a neder or a naziris. We'll see in a minute. And they said like the Nedarim of the wicked. So nadar b'nazir u'b'korban u'b'shvuah. So that person would have vowed regarding Nazir, Korban, and Shvuah. Now, what does that mean? So basically, the way the Gemara says it is, let's say somebody says, Knidrei Rishayim Hareini, like the vows of Rishayim, behold I am, or hey, I will be. And somehow we're supposed to understand that you fill in the blank, like hey Nazir. Or Knidrei Rishayim, Hareza, like the vows of Rishayim, this should be a Korban. Or Knidrei Rishayim, I won't do this following thing. So like a Shavua that I won't.
So you taking Shavua Lashon Neder?
Apparently, okay, yes, that's true too, but we'll worry about that in a minute. So there's two parts to this, meaning one is that you don't spell out the end of your sentence. One is that you say, I will be, and you don't say, I'll be a Nazir. You don't say, this will be a Korban, or the obligation of a Korban is on me. Or you don't say a Shavua that I won't do the following thing, that you don't have one of the key words. That would be a standard Yad. And then the question is always going to be, how do we know how we're supposed to fill in the blank? Is it a Yad Mochiach, a Yad Eino Mochiach, it's an Eino Mochiach Yad that doesn't work at all, and even if it does work, how do we know what you intended? That's like one whole collection of things. But the Chiddush of the Mishnah seems to be the first phrase, the Knidrei Rishayim. And what are you supposed to mean by that? And what's going to be clear, we'll read the end of the Mishnah, is that the word, that if you say Knidrei Rishayim, then it works. Okay, however, let's focus on that. That's really the Chiddush of the Mishnah. Knidrei Rishayim works. Knidrei Kasherim lo amar klum. Like the Nedarim of kosher people, you didn't say anything.
I guess kosher people don't
now,
do Nedarim.
That's exactly the point. Knidvosan, however, if you say like the Nedava of Ksherim, then that does work. Nadar b'nazir b'korban. It does work. Presumably, Knidvos Rishayim would not work. The other thing that's missing from the end of this Mishnah is Shavua. It doesn't say Nadar b'nazir b'korban with Shavua. So basically what the Mishnah is telling us is two things. Number one is, and this will be a nice opportunity for the Gemara to get into at least part of its discussion. From time to time it will have a discussion about the intrinsic religious value of making Nedarim. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? So one of the things that the Gemara is going to get to is, basically the message here is that Rishayim make Nedarim and Ksherim make Nedavas. Okay, and not vice versa. Now, what's the difference between a neder and a nedava? And why do we say that, like, we don't mean that if somebody makes a neder, they're objectively a Russia in all of their doings, but we basically mean that it is at least the way the Ron Center says, b'davar zeh. Like, in this type of an act, when it comes to making nedarim and nedavos, it's a lesser act to make, or, it's an inappropriate act to make a neder.
Unless it's
so
a
it
mitzvah,
doesn't mean
right?
You're globally, right. Well, like that gets to the other stuff. Mitzvah is a different discussion, but we're going to bracket that. But, now what's the difference? So anyway, but at least in this particular local act, that was a wrong thing to do. So that's how come it's qualified as Knidrei Rishayim. Now, what's the difference? So Korban is the easiest place to see the difference. If you take a neder of Harei Alai, I have an obligation to bring a korban. That's a classic neder. And the classic nedava is Harei Zo. This is a korban. So Harei Alai is asking for trouble, right? Because Harei Alai means you have this outstanding obligation, and you might never get around to fulfilling it, right? Right? Do not postpone doing it, right? And it's Tova shelo tidor misha tidor v'lo tishalem. Psukim that the Gemara is going to quote in a minute. Better not to take vows. Oh, you think you're such a tzaddik? You're going to show how frum you are. You're going to take a vow. It's not going to be worth it if you're not going to be able to fulfill it.
Well,
so
you do
that's
fulfill
why.
it, sound like it's
Okay,
better,
we will talk about that. Now, how is an adava better? So that's for like a neder is asking for trouble. How's an adava better? An adava is you say Harei Zo. This is animal is a korban. Now, what that means is you still have an issue of Baal Ta'acher. if you don't wind up bringing this animal to the Beis Hamikdash, you're still going to be over in Baal Ta'achya. However, it's a little bit safer because if the animal gets lost or dies or something of that nature, then you're done. You don't have an obligation on your person. You've only sanctified the animal. So if something happens to the animal, you have no longer any remaining obligation. Of course, one could argue that there's also a greater danger. The greater danger is if you have an Ola sheep walking around in your flock, you might come to misuse it. So it's not so, but okay, but at least there, what the Gemara will say, there's at least a circumstance. I'm just now giving you a summary of the whole Gemara, but it's important to understand what's going on in the Mishnah. There's a circumstance where you can make it a dove and pretty much be free from everything, which is you walk your sheep to the Beis Hamikdash, and a minute before you enter into the Mikdash, you say Harei Zo. Of course, somebody could say you could walk your sheep to the Beis Hamikdash, and a minute before you walk in, you say Harei Alai. Anyway, somehow that's seen as an adava is the more appropriate thing to do. Now, that's all very lovely, but what does that have to do with the idea of a nazir? How can you have a neder or an adava as a nazir? A nazir, you're basically making yourself into a nazir. How could you have a neder or an adava in a shavua? What would that even mean? I mean, the shavua is taking an oath. So the Ram basically says that there's not a sort of technical legal difference between those. So it's actually just reflect different sort of like circumstances and motivations. But the word nidava, when the Torah speaks about in Parshas Truma, the Ram doesn't quote this, but he alludes to it. Right? Kol nediv lei, asher yidvenu libo. So nidava has a sense of like the generosity of your heart. Okay, so a nidava, says the Ran, refers to somebody that is doing this because of sincere, religious motivations. Just wants to serve God, give something to God, or whatever. That's like the idea of a nidava. Whereas a neder might have some, more sort of like, complicated sort of motivations. A lot of times people are doing something, they're doing things to be frum, but there's other things going on in their head too, right? I don't know, you feel angry at yourself, so you want to make a neder, or you feel that, somehow, you become a nazir because you're fed up with some, with certain types
getting
of
drunk
behavior.
every day.
But look, maybe you even feel bad, like you see that you've been sinning and you want to correct it, so therefore you want to make a neder or a nedava. So there's a religious component to it, but it's not so much like just from the free-flowing, uncomplicated religious, sort of motivation. So that's more what he says in this neder category. So it's a little bit tautologist, right? To say that I'm not really, but to say like, Rishai make Nedarim, we're going to define the word as neder to mean, say things out of less, out of more complex, more complicated religious motivations. So that's what the word like neder sort of symbolizes. Again, it's not a technical legal difference. Okay, so if you say kinidre ksherim lo amar klum, because a kosher person doesn't say things out of complicated religious motivations. They just freely say something. And the dava, that's what ksherim do. It's not what Rishayim do.
So this would imply that nazir is a chote, though, according to this.
Okay, no, there are different ways you could be a nazir. You could be a nazir out of a neder motivation, which is more complicated. You could be a nazir out of a nedava motivation. Okay, so again, it's interesting because then it doesn't have a technical legal difference. It's a way of describing sort of, the religious mindset and motivation of the person making it. And therefore, by people that are, again, why you call somebody a Russia? Everybody has complicated motivations. Who has pure motivations? But anyway, okay, but that's sort of, the neder reflects a more complicated sort of religious mindset, complex, whereas nadav is just the complete free, free motivation, free will. And therefore, what you say, nidre rishayim, it's a meaningful statement. Nidvos rishayim is not a meaningful statement. Nidre ksherim is not meaningful. Nidvos ksherim is, because again, it's just describing where these people are coming from. Yes.
What's tripping me up a little bit is the formulation Harei Alai, because Harei Alai, doesn't it imply Harei Alai to do something, whereas Neder was on the object?
Yeah, so when he comes to a korban, that's getting back to the issues we discussed before about the whole idea of a Neder for tzedakah and so on. So when it comes to a korban, then you can have a neder which is a harei alai, sort of the same way we discussed that yesterday about a tzedakah neder, right? So whereas a classic nidrei isser, which is what our mesechet is harei zo, in certain areas of nidrei mitzvah, particularly korban and tzedakah, it can create a personal obligation. And then it became the question of, can you just create a general neder mitzvah, like to obligate yourself to learn the daf tomorrow? All right?
Yes.
So now, So let's take a look at, if you want to see the line in the Ran, take a look here. He says like this. The Eagle of Medik, says the Ran, 3 lines in the wide line. Harei Nedava Eina Elaba Omer Harei Zo, Neder Bahor Elai, the Chiluk Zeh Les Ela Nedarim. The Korbanos, Ava Benaziris, my Neder, my Nedava Shaichi Pei, Harei Eino Ela B'inyan Echa, Harei Eino Ela B'inyan Echa, there's one way to become a Nazir. Near Beiner, the Neder, Perusho Dava She'eno Bala Gamri Benidvas Halev. Okay, that's not coming, purely from, totally from the pureness of your heart and the free giving of your heart. V'nedava Perusho Mashadam Noder, I'm sorry, Yoter Benidvas Nafsho, V'shamaisav Yoser Ritsuyin. Mishum Hachi, Amina Dinederhu, Harei Lefishenu Mitnadev Legamre. So that's why he says maybe that's reflected in the idea that even by a korban, neder is harei, because you're not yet giving it. You're promising to give it in the future. So it shows a certain degree of hesitation. Okay. Even shalohi frisho achshav. In the double b'marezel, if you nadev nigro yoter ratzoi. The kivin shezeu perusham shel neder v'nedavar, and that's how by korban it maps onto how unhesitatingly you're doing it. So up in Nazir. Because you say Hareini Nazir. If you're doing it like for the right religious reasons, then your act of Nazirus was an act of a Nedava, a gift to God, as it were. And if it's not for the right reasons, then your act of Nazirus is like, something you forbade on yourself. But we don't call it like a giving to God. So how much you identify like a gift to God, or do we say something that's more like something you did to yourself? Okay, and that's why he says, that's why we say that. If that's the definition, then a neder works for Russia, not a real Russia, but whatever, but not an unambiguous kosher, and the dove is for a kosher. Okay, now, why does it not have shvua in the end of the Mishnah, right? Why does it say, if you say kinidvos ksherim, it also works for a shvua? And here's the basic reason is because ksherim never take shvuah.
That's the Ron said that earlier.
So right, Ron says it earlier. The idea is that shvuah is always this problem of shem shemayim levatala, and there's a general sense, which we'll see later, but whatever, that I mean, it's actually, there's an interesting Rashi Ramban on the Torah about this, which is ubishmoti shaveya, like the pasuk ubishmoti shaveya. It says, what's it called? It says, so Rashi says, "Mish yesh bo kol hamidas halalu, as a shemot kachatiro, voti baku, or so that person who be shmoti shaveya, but that there could be a time when somebody is at the right madrega that would be appropriate to take a shur b'shem Hashem, but everybody else not." And I believe the Ramban there argues. He says it's never appropriate to take a shur. Like it means like b'shmo, as opposed, if you're going to take a shur, you better do it in God's name and not in the name of some other God. But anyway. But that's a question, like since the shvur is about taking God's name, can it ever be appropriate religious act? Because you could see, to take an oath in the name of God is calling God as your witness. Maybe you can see that as a proper religious act. On the other hand, because of the consequence of the consequence of taking God's name in vain. We just learned yesterday that somebody who hears somebody say Shem Shamayim has to put him in Chayrim, right? Shem Shamayim Levatala. The not weighty use of God's name, there could be something intrinsically complicated and problematic by taking the shvua. So therefore, the Mishnah says, if you're saying that I want this to work like Ksherim would do this type of an act, so it could be that therefore that never allows that, therefore for it to be a binding shvua, so that would not be the thing that a Ksherim would do. Yes, Charlie.
When I served on a grand jury, we were sworn in, and they said, you can affirm rather than swear, and the guy looked at me directly as if my was implying that I was not going to swear.
Right, there you go. Okay, so now the Gemara says like this. So that's a good Jewish practice, is never to take the shvua. So now the Gemara says like this. Okay, so that's the basic point of the Mishnah. But the part that's missing of the Mishnah, as opposed to the qualifier, kinid v'yishayim and kinid vosam, etc., is what's the end of your sentence? How do we know what you're trying to say? So the Gemara says, maybe what you're trying to say is like this, Kinidri Nishayim lo Nedarna. I won't take an oath like the Nedarim of Rishayim. How do we know that you mean, how do we know you mean to say, like the Nedarim of Rishayim, this should be forbidden, or this should be a korban, or whatever you're saying? So the Gemara says, Amar Shmuel, But Omer, Kinidri Rishayim Hareini Alai Vehemenu. So these are three different statements. You say Kinidri Rishayim Hareini. Like the Nedarim of Rishonim of Nishayim, behold I am. And then you have to fill in the blank with.
And there's another walking in front of you.
Well, maybe there's another walking in front. Like the Nidre Rishayim, it is on me. What's on me? Kinidre Rishayim, from it. I won't eat from it. Okay, so that's like a yad. Some of the critical part of the sentence is missing, of course. It seemed to me that that's not much of a yad, which is what the Gemara is going to ask. Let's take a look at the Gemara. Okay, Hareini b'nesirus. So here's what you mean. Behold, I am in a state of being a nazir. A lie. This is on me, but korban is a korban. I should, by the way, mention that there's a debate between Tosas and the Ran what the korban means here. Whether the korban means a classic korban, like I obligate myself to bring an olah, I make this into an olah. That's a neder and a nazir. That's the classic neder nazir distinction. The other possibility, Tosas, that's what the Ran says, because it works better with the whole neder and dava. The other possibility Tosas says is that no, the korban means like konam. Okay, that you're actually saying that this piece of bread is forbidden alive, konam, like a korban. And it's just a classic nidrei isser. Okay, so that's what he says the korban what means. And heimenu, that I won't eat from it, b'shvua, as a shvua. By the way, the Tosas' read is better, because if you remember, like the three classic sort of types of hafla that we're dealing with that aren't shaykh to Seder Kodshim is neder, nazir, and a shvua, right? So the neder part is the korban, according to Tosfos. Anyway, so that's how we have to fill in the blank. And I won't eat from it, a shvua that I won't eat from it. So the Gemara says, the Gemara now questions, okay, you told me at least a trigger word here, but how do you know how to fill in the blank? Hareini Naziris, what do you mean, behold, I'm in a nazir? How do you know that's how you fill in the blank? Dilma Hareini Batanis Kamar, maybe I should be in a tainus. Maybe I should be, I don't know, a lot of things. I mean, even if there's a clear type of, religious context, there's more than one meaning. So it's at least a yad she'eino mochiach. And the Gemara actually says, and this is Shmuel talking. We know Shmuel holds a yad she'eino mochiach is no good. But you could even say further, maybe it's not even a yad she'eino mochiach. Maybe like it's not a yad at all. Like there's so many things you could mean. Okay, so how do we know you mean that you want to be a nazir? So Amar Shmuel kashaya nazir over lefanav. All right, a lot of things we're reading into the Mishnah. There was a Nazir walking in front of you and you said Hareini. So clearly you meant Hareini Nazir. Okay, but the Knidrei Ksherim or Knidrei Rishon, that's the Chiddush of the Mishnah. And while normally, right, it seems we get frustrated, that when the Gemara does crazy ukimtas to explain a Mishnah. So first of all, it missed the key word Hareini. Second of all, it missed the key fact that a Nazir was walking in front of you. Okay, fine, but you know what? I actually don't think that that's the issue of the Mishnah. The issue of the Mishnah is when you have the qualifier, Kinidrei Rishayim or Kinidrei Ksherim. Kinidvos Rishayim or Kinidvos Ksherim. The end of the sentence is however that sentence is going to end. You have a sentence that normally would be interpreted as Nazirus, Neder, Korban, whatever. The question is, what is the meaning when you add this qualifier at the beginning? So the Mishnah is not really focused on dealing with the end of the sentence, okay? Which is why actually the Ran says, even if you were explicit, even if you said, Kinidrei Rishayim Kikar Zeh Alai Konam, okay? That's still the Chiddush of the Mishnah, because if you say Kinidrei Rishayim, it works. But if you say Kinidrei Ksherim Kikar Zeh Alai Korban, it wouldn't work. The sentence could have been totally explicit. The Chiddush of the Mishnah is the first qualifier. What that whether that sort of says that it should or should it work, whether that's a phenomenon. Nidrei Ksherim, Nidrei Ksherim. Now Tosas disagrees. Tosas says it's only because the end of the sentence is somewhat ambiguous. So therefore, if you actually said Kinidrei Ksherim Kikar Zeh Alai Konam, it would be asur. But if given that there's an element of a yad going on here, and it's not exactly clear how to end the sentence, and there's some ambiguity, therefore, when that qualifier is something that like normally doesn't work, or like isn't a sort of thing, Nidrei Ksherim, then we don't interpret your sentence. Then we mean that whether your commitment to make this thing usher is more ambiguous, and therefore we'll say it won't be effective. But if your sentence was completely unambiguous, this qualifier in the beginning wouldn't matter. Okay, so that's an interesting debate of the Ran and Tosfos whether we have to be talking about an ambiguous end. But the way the Ran reads it, and the way I think it's just simpler to read it in the Gemara, is that the emphasis here is not on the rest of the sentence. We can say the rest of the sentence is whatever you said. There was a Nazir walking in front of you. You explicitly said, Hareini Nazir. Said whatever you wanted to say. The Chiddush of the Mishnah is that the beginning clause, how much does that impact, does that determine whether or not the rest of the sentence will or won't take effect? Yeah.
How how magically potent is the sense of language here in terms of Hareini? In other words, for my own subjective reality. Like Hareini Kohen walks by.
Right.
Hareini Isha. Hareini
Well, obviously, only things that you can effect yourself. Although the Ran does ask whether there's a question between Ehei and Hareini. The Ran says that, isn't there another Gemara that says if you say Ehei Nazir, it works. And, does Hareini any different than the word Ehei? So he has a little bit of discussion like that. But obviously, it only works in things where you can actually create those statuses. Yes.
Who's going to use this phrase? Who's going to say like the word when they want to
say it themselves? Yeah, that's an excellent point too. Like, why would somebody even say Kinidrei Rishayim if they're trying to make it take effect? I don't know. It's a real curious question. Like, that's why I said this Mishnah is such a strange, there has to be some sort of. It's such a dense Mishnah, unless it's a way also that the Mishnah is using it as a way of communicating a certain displeasure with the whole phenomenon of Nedarim and his ears and so on. Now you remember that we talked about the whole idea of Konam and one of Kinuyim, and one of the points of Kinuyim was essentially because of to get people to avoid or these types of languages, right? And that maybe the whole taking of Nedarim was too prevalent, right? And they wanted, thank you, to create either a more technical language or a language that made it, no, sorry, thank you. A language that actually would prevent people or so, from maybe overly doing it. So I think the Mishnah could be trying to communicate a certain displeasure with the phenomenon, as a way, telling a halacha that communicates that displeasure. But you're right, like who's going to take a vow and say, oh, this is on us to me, like the way Rishayim would take Nedarim. It's bizarre. All right, but anyway, bottom line is that we're saying the end of the sentence was clear enough, and the Chiddush is the beginning. And again, the Ran says even if the end of the sentence was 100% explicit, the beginning would trigger whether or not it would take effect. Okay, now we're going to look at the rest of the sentence.
That's what Tosafot's point too, right? When he says the very first quote, Tosafot, Rabbi Eliezer Shafili, he's your Kona Behedya, Im Kamidrei Kashera, Filo Hachi, right? It's the same point.
Right, but then Tosfos goes on to have a question about that. But in the beginning, he says that he's correct. Tosfos says that explicitly at the beginning, and then he, like the Ran, and then he goes on later and he questions that. Yes.
If we're saying the end is not ambiguous, it's clearly defined. Does Kinidrei Kasharim has evolved into our Bli Neder?
Something like that. That's true. That's a cute point. That I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. Kinidrei Kasharim means like with a certain right. I don't really want to do it, so I'm not promising. Yeah. David Schatz told me once that he's going to write this Jewish lexicon. So like translation of Jewish phrases. So what was it? It was like, in Yirtzeh Hashem means if someone else is paying for it. Bli Neder means maybe. Bli Neder means maybe. Baruch Hashem means none of your darn business. All right. So I cleaned that one up a little bit. Okay, so now the question is like this. All right, so it says like this. So hey menu. So if you say right, Kinidrei Rishayim hey menu, from it, b'shvua, that means an oath that I won't eat from it. Maybe it means I will eat from it. How do you even know it means a shvua? Anything. Amar Rava the Amar Himenu Shelo Ochal. Now here it sounds like you really are explicit. Okay. No, you say from it I won't eat. So what's the chiddush? So Mao Detema Halo Mafik Shvua Mipume. You didn't say shvua I won't eat. You just said I won't eat. Kamash Malan. So some take out the word again. Kamash Malan. They even when you say the word shvua. If you say I won't eat from it, then the idea of shvua is a yad. So this point seems to be saying, no, part of the Chiddush is that you're not explicit. Ignoring the opening qualifier, Kinidrei Ksherim or Kinidrei Rishayim, the part of the point here is you didn't say the whole sentence, and nevertheless it's binding because of a yad.
But it's just a
pressure, though, right? What? Yeah, I know, but the point is that the Gemara, even if you just said, I won't eat from it, that the Chiddush is that's a yad l'shvua, and it means a shvua you won't eat from it. So it's clear that the Gemara thinks that part of the Chiddush of this mission is not the opening qualifier, but that the rest of the sentence is also a yad, and we fill in the blank. Okay, and you don't have and you don't have to say the key word shvua. But in addition, the major focus of this Mishnah is on the opening qualifier. Yes, Charlie.
Yeah, so it could have made a distinction between something that could have been made a korban versus something that couldn't. Like a loaf of bread could never be a korban.
Right. That gets to Tosfos' question about whether by the word korban we mean korban or we mean konam.
Yeah.
I just want to understand. But if you didn't, preface it with either Nidrei Rishayim or Kshirim, whatever it is, and you said the rest of that, no one would say that if I just say, okay, I'm going to eat this, I'm going to eat breakfast today. I'm taking a shua to eat breakfast, right?
Right. So look, that gets back to the Gemara's question about, Shana Parak Zed, Neder Gadol, Neder Lo Yisrael. When do you say something like, here's what I'm planning to do? And when do you have the context where it's clearly mean it as you're creating a religious commitment? So again, I think that a lot of that has to do with context. You're right.
But something it's not religious at all, like eating breakfast, right? I mean, at least
People
over there.
People for a lot of things. Again, you're right. You need context. You're absolutely correct. Those words themselves could just be normal speech, right? Like Eshke, Ashkin Veshana Perak Zeh could be normal speech. How do you know when is the weighty enough context to show that that's what you're committing to? It's a very good point. You're right. I think that there is, context is critical there. Okay. So now the Gemara says like this. Okay. So it says. Now we're going to use this to get into this discussion about the difference between neder and dava. So, who has a difference between neder and dava? Lema lo Rabbi Meir lo Rabbi Yehuda. Not Rabbi Meir, not Rabbi Yehuda. And this now becomes a perfect opportunity to discuss the values of making neder. Titanu, turn the brisa. The end of the pasuk is Eit asher tidur shalem. Is that the Lashon? The vow that you take, fulfill it. Right? Better though not to take a vow than to take it and not fulfill it. All right, so that's kind of obvious, but it means don't think that the very act of taking a vow is a religious act, and that if you don't want, then don't worry about whether in the end. A lot of people feel that way, right? The spirit hits them, and they make a big, they raise their hands and they show appeal, or whatever, and they think that there's something intrinsically valuable about doing that. No, be aware that if you're not going to fulfill it, it's better you should have never done it in the first place. Okay, but the question is, what about doing it and fulfilling it? So what's the story there? So Tov Mizel Mizeh Sheina Noder Kol Ikar. Rav Meir. Rav Meir says the best is not even doing it and fulfilling it. The best is don't make Nedarim. Focus on your religious obligations. Don't try to do anything extra, and that could be for one of two reasons. Why is it better not to do it and fulfill it? One could be because there's always the risk you won't. So it's better as a principle not to start doing these types of things because it's too risky, okay? And it's just not good, and not good practice because of the possibility that you won't. The other answer is that maybe in general, it's, religion should be approached as a sense of heteronymous responsibility, divinely imposed obligations, right?
Yeah, what is this word you're saying?
It's heteronymous, right? Not heteronymous. It's the difference of autonomous. What is it? Isn't it heteronomy? Right? Autonomy is sort of rule by oneself, and heteronomy is rule imposed by others. Okay. Anyway, pretty sure. Okay. Anyway, so that your religion, your avodas Hashem should be what God demands of you. You have your own religious impulses and desires or whatever. That's just you're serving your own religious impulses. That's not true avodas Hashem. Okay, it could be a fundamental idea that, now of course it's funny, there are other times where kol mediv lo yivyen, eda shetid libo. So okay, if the shul needs a donation, you should make a donation. But you want to start making Nedarim just in a vacuum, maybe that's intrinsically not a good phenomenon. That's a different way of thinking about it. It's important, what the Gemara doesn't quote here, but it quotes elsewhere, is kol hanoder ki'ilu banabama. Right now, okay, so it's great. Exactly, it's great. You made a bama and you brought a korban on it. Wonderful. You did a religious act. Except, really, our bama is always a good thing. If there's a central base on mikdash and there's a good, healthy religious sort of establishment in place, going off on yourself is not necessarily a good thing, right? On the other hand, there are times where we don't have a good, healthy religious establishment in place, and it's the time of a heter bamos, and that's how people fundamentally serve God. So it raises, I think, those interesting questions about the nature of sort of personal religious experience as opposed to sort of communal and and sort of imposed from above. And that's one way. So it's interesting to ask, what is this idea, that it's better not to make a neder even if you're going to fulfill it? Is it because of the possibility of non-fulfillment, or there's something intrinsically religiously problematic with this? Yes.
Heteronomy definition in English: subjection to something else, especially a lack of moral freedom or self-determination. First used 1798.
There you go. Okay, so that's what Rabbi Meir says. Rabbi Yehuda Omer told Mizel Noder Mushalem. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Best is if you're able to make the neder and fulfill it, that would be the best. So anyway, getting back to us, what's our mission that says Nidrei Rishoyim? So it doesn't seem like Rabbi Yehuda, right? Rabbi Yehuda seems to feel that Nedarim Nedarim is a good thing. Why doesn't it not seem like Rabbi Meir? Because the Mishnah seems to say because Rabbi Meir says Nedarim is not a good thing, but the Mishnah seems to say Nedavas are a good thing. We don't know that Rabbi Meir would distinguish between the two. So the Gemara goes, the easiest response is Afilu Tema Rabbi Meir. It is Rabbi Meir. Ki Kama Rabbi Meir ben Neder. The Nedava lo Kamar. It's a Neder that Rabbi Meir has a problem with. Okay, in Nedava he does not. Now, again, by the way, getting back to my heteronomy, autonomy issue, we can actually understand the difference between Neder and Nedava, different than we said before, right? Before we were trying to understand what's the big difference. A Neder, you might not fulfill it. In Nedava, you might not fulfill it. In Nedava, you might wind up misusing the korban if you make something in Ola. But there is a difference in that a Neder creates a religious obligation that you have imposed upon yourself, right? As opposed to a Nedava, you're just sanctifying something. So you could actually say that to create a sense of religious obligation coming from somewhere other than God, right, is intrinsically, problematic. Whereas a Nedava, where you're not creating an obligation, you're just sanctifying an object, right? There's not creating that other sense of you, in a sense, obligating yourself, which is sort of the Neder phenomenon. So that's an interesting possibility of why the distinction. Anyway, the Gemara doesn't elaborate on, well, it will elaborate on it in a minute, but it says, yes, according to Rabbi Meir, Rishai make Nedarim, Tov Mizeh She'eno Noder Kol Ikar, but Nedavas would be okay. So the Gemara says, the Nedava lo Kama, the Ha'aktani Knidvosam, if you say like the Nedavas, of Rishayim, Ned Benozer B'Korban. So why do we say Knidvosam Nadar? Right? Because if like they're Nedava, it should say like if they're making a neder, then it's not a Nedava. If a neder is a bad thing and a Nedava is a good thing. Tani Nadav Benozer B'Korban. Okay, and a lot of Rishayim say the Gemara could have just asked that on the Mishnah itself. Why does it say Knidvosam Nadar? It should have said Knidvosam Nadav. Anyway, what we're saying is that for Rabbi Meir, neder is a bad phenomenon. That's nidrei rishayim. That's why it's a meaningful statement. Nedav is a good phenomenon. So therefore, only it's a nedav of a rasha is not meaningful. A nedav of a kasher is meaningful. So now the Gemara is going to ask, what's the difference? Mashna no der delo. Why is a neder not a good phenomenon for Rabbi Meir? So now the Gemara, rather than the sort of nice theological, philosophical point I was making, seems to say, no, the only real problem with a neder, even according to Rabbi Meir, is that you won't fulfill it. And therefore you shouldn't make it at all. So if that's true, why isn't Nedav any better? Nedav anami lo. So the Gemara says, no, Hillel hazaken. No, there's a way to do a Nedava which is unproblematic, like Hillel. Tanya, nobody ever did Me'ilah with his korban. He brought it unsanctified into the courtyard, everybody up to the courtyard, probably not into the courtyard itself.
Right?
And he would sanctify it, and then he would do shchita a second later, and shecht it. Now, I said, why can't you also do the same with a neder? You wait till it's a second before you bring it, you make a neder, and then you sanctify it. So you can, but that just adds another step, right? Because in the end, you're going to have to sanctify the animal anyway. So if you're standing there right at the door of the Beis HaMikdash, why would you first take a neder, then sanctify it, then bring it? Just straight sanctify it. Okay, so the Gemara says, by a neder, a nedava you can completely avoid. You never have that sense of a personal obligation you might not fulfill. All you have is the end result of giving a korban. And you give the korban in the way where there's never any time that something wrong might come of it, okay? As soon as you focus on creating a personal obligation, it's always like dangerous business. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. If you hear the focus is not that, the focus on just give a korban. You're given in a way where there's no possibility that there will be any misuse. So an Nedava of Ksherim is possible that it's possible to have an Nedava of Ksherim. Now, when the Tosfos and the Ran ask, does that mean that if you say Kinidvos Ksherim Harezo Ola, you have to be standing at the door of the Beis HaMikdash, or else it doesn't work? It doesn't sound that way from the Mishnah. So Tosfos says no. Tosfos says since there is such a phenomenon as Nidvos Ksherim, there's a way to do a nedava in a total 100% kosher, unproblematic way. The phrase kinidvos ksherim works I can say this should be effective as the nedava of kosher
Even if you're
people.
doing it in an unkosher
And there
way.
is such a thing as a nedava of kosher people in a very particular set of circumstances. So therefore, this is effective like the nedava of kosher people. But there's no such thing as a neder of kosher people. Okay, and therefore I say it's effective like the neder. If your person was really kosher, they wouldn't be making a neder, so it would not be effective. Okay, so it doesn't have to mean that in the Mishnah you're standing at the door of the Beis Hamikdash. It just means that the concept of a nedava of a kosher people, that concept does exist. All right? There's a question? No? Okay, yeah.
Just this is a minor point, but it looks like the person who brought the korban is shechting it.
Well, you could. In theory, you could.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Zar can do shechita, but that's true. Okay, so now the Gemara says, "Hani chonadav the korbanos." Fine. So we have an idea that a kosher person, the idea of a nedava of ksherim is a phenomenon that exists by korbanot. Nedava and Nazir is Michael Amema. Where is there an idea that a Nazir can be a Nedava? Again, reading this, the Ran's way, which is not a technical legal difference of how you said Harei Alai Harei Zu, but it means a purely religious act of Nazirus. So is that really true? So it's a question why the Gemara thinks that it might not be. Maybe it's informed by the idea that the Gemara says that Asher Chata al Hanafesh, and that a Nazir brings a korban chatos, which so there's like the whole idea of Nazirus is complicated, right? So anyway, is that really true that could be a pure nedava? So the Gemara says yes. Several like Shimon HaTzadik, hold like Shimon HaTzadik. The time was on the Brisa. Amar Shimon HaTzadik, Miyamai lo rachalti asham nazir tamei. I never ate from the asham of a nazir tamei. Now, because presumably, well, we'll see in a minute, but obviously because that was problematic, whether that was an appropriate that the person who was in this situation to begin with, and so on. We'll see. We'll expand on that in a minute.
But according to
Ela echad, right? 1 minute. Let's just read. Pam achas once, ba'adam echad nazir min hadarov. I saw a Nazirite come to the Beis Hamikdash, came from the south. Ra'iti shehu yafeh einayim. He had beautiful eyes, v'tov roi, and very handsome. K'tosav sudu rotlo taltalim. It's almost like from Shirashirim, right? And his locks were like
too.
That's true. David HaMelech, right? His locks were like layered and flowing of his hair. Amarkilo, I said, B'ni. What made you to accept the vow of Nazirut, which will force you to shave your beautiful hair, cut it off? Amrali, he said to me, I was a shepherd to my father in my city, in my village. I went to draw water from the well. I saw my reflection. My Yetzer Hara, my lustful desires, all of a sudden seized me. It wanted to take me away from this world.
Opposite of narcissist.
Right, exactly. That's a good point. It's the reverse of the whole narcissist story. That's I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. So, okay. So anyway, basically was trying to lead me to a life of physical indulgence. Amartilo, I said to my Yetzer Hara, Russia, why are you, glorifying yourself in a world that is not yours? Meaning this world is temporary, and is fleeting, and it's not, and this isn't really, it's not the world that we should be indulging in. You want me to sort of care about about the person, me, who is eventually going to be, food for the maggots. Havodah. By it's like an oath, like in the name of the temple or heaven. I will shave. Maybe he was talking to his hair, not to his Yetzer Hara. Anyway, I will shave you for God's sake. Okay. I stood up and I kissed him on his head. And I said, B'ni kamocha yirbu nozer nazirot b'Yisrael. For you, like you, those should be like the people who take Nazirus in Israel.
But then he became Tamei or something.
Truly l'shem. Well, that's going to be a discussion. Truly l'shem shamayim. Allah regarding you, the verse says, Ish ki aflili dor neder nazir lahazir lahashem. It's lahashem. And you can understand that, right? Because, it's always that thing. Like, if you go ahead and you adopt this whole role of asceticism or whatever, it's clear from the Nevi'im that the Nazirim were like an identifiable group of people that were striving for a higher religious status, right? It says Va'eshket HaNazirim Yayin V'Lenavim Amarti Lo Tinaveyu. So, so it's always a question. Somebody is adopting all of these types of frumkites. How much are they doing it l'shem shamayim, and how much are they doing it so that It makes them feel good about how frum they're being, or it makes other people look at them in a particular way and puts them in a different class in society, right? So there's always those questions about when people are, especially in ways that are sort of visibly separating themselves, right? It's not just a private frumkeit. It's something that visibly is signaling how you're different and separate from the rest of society. So you could understand why there's a real concern about how pure is the motivation. But here's somebody that is doing what?
How do we translate the case of the Torah of Dami?
To waste me away from the world. And actually, it's funny because the world means the Olam Haba, right? So it's like, if I followed my Yetzer Hara, I would lose Olam Haba.
Right. Min Olam here means Min Olam Haba.
Exactly. Okay, so here it was actually, for very pure reasons, completely unselfish or purely religious reasons. So anyway, it's possible that there would be an uncomplicated nazir, a nedava of a nazir. So now the Gemara asks about this. So the Gemara says, Maskifla of money, Maishna Asham. It's funny, Maskifla, because it's really more of a point of clarification rather than a challenge. But anyway, Maishna Asham Nazir Tamei Lo Achil. Why would Shimon Tzadik not eat the Nazir of an Asham Tamei? The Asyachet, because it's coming for a sin that he became Tamei. Kol Asham Snami Lo Lechel. He shouldn't eat any Asham. The Achet Asri, because it's coming to atone for sin. And later Rabbi Yonah responded back. Hainu Taima. This is the reason. Kishin Tohin, because when they become Tamei and they have to restart the Naziris all over again, they become astounded or regretful. And I jumped ahead. Kishin Tohin, when they are worked up over their own religious state and they feel that they're sinners and they want to make themselves better, Nozrin, then they decide to become a Nazir. Then when they become tamei, Rabim aleim yimei nizirut, and then it extends longer than they had expected. Mitcharatin behem. Then they say, "Oh, I never should have become this," because they're not really doing it because they're really, it was like an impetuous type of a thing. Like you feel bad and shameful about where you are religiously, so you want to do something about it. So you decide you're going to be a nazir. Okay, so in one end you could say it is coming from a religious perspective. You're trying to put yourself on a better path, but it's coming from a certain impetuosity and from a certain sense of more of guilt and out of a sense of a deep conviction. So therefore, because it's not coming from a deep conviction, if it gets hard, then you wish you never would have done it. In the end, you don't have the endurance for it. And it's as if, not literally, but it's as if they bring chulin lazara. So the point is that Shimon HaTzadik, it's interesting. It's a normal Nazir who never became Tamei, you could say maybe that person is always good. Maybe he only had a problem with those that became Tamei. You could have said something that the Gemara also didn't say, which is that if you became Tamei, maybe it shows that you weren't as careful as you needed to have been. You could have sort of made it about other things. But the Gemara, interestingly, first of all, the Torah, when it describes the Nazir, sees Ki Amusalav made Peteta Pitom, that people sometimes become Tamei and it has nothing to do with their fault. So we don't want to assume any fault about that. But still, wants to say, if once it becomes Tamei, then he would seriously question whether this person, now that it's schlepping on, is still really seriously, remained as deeply committed to being a Nazir, as maybe they started out. And this was the one guy that he had no questions that this was a deep religious conviction. Of course, what that also allows for the fact is that somebody who didn't become Tamei, maybe they more would be prepared to say that there were people there that were of pure conviction, or at least that they didn't have, maybe or maybe not, maybe they had complicated convictions, but they didn't have a chance to regret it yet. It was over quickly enough. All right, anyway, so it says like this. Afilu Nazir Tahar Nami. So if that's true, then a Nazir Tahar, also we should say that as soon as the immediate urge to do something about it passes, they regret it. No, Nazir Tahar, no. The Amude Ami Nafshe Diachol Lindur. No, because that's only 30 days. So therefore, by a Nazir Tahor, even though the conviction might not have been as deep, we don't necessarily think
that you've done it for a year, though.
Okay, but we don't think that it's gotten to, but the standard is 30 days. We don't think it's gotten to the stage where he's begun to regret it. Okay, so this guy, we feel that it was a very, all of the Nazirs we feel are either are like not a deep religious conviction. Some of them, there hasn't been enough time for that to demonstrate itself, but we still think it wasn't a deep conviction. And some of them, we actually feel that if it schleps on, they really have lost their commitment to it. Okay, whereas this guy, we had no question. Anyway, the point being that it's I think interesting, especially if you think about contemporary realities, right? About people who want to adopt. I mean, the whole idea of neder, people who are looking for chumras, people who are looking for ways to add upon themselves religious demands, and particularly in the Nazir case, in a way that very much marks them as different from the larger society. And those types of motivations are not always pure and uncomplicated, and are not, and maybe we believe they're l'shem shamayim, but deep down they're not, and that's what the Gemara is sort of focusing on, the value of making a neder, the value of being a nazir. So now we're saying, according to Rabbi Meir, we're normally skeptical about Nedarim, and we would also normally be skeptical about Nizirut, but there would be some circumstances where it might be actually a type of a Nidava, a pure religious motivation. Yes?
It's very rare that the Gemara cites someone as early as Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik.
It's true, but also we're looking about when there was a Beis HaMikdash and people were becoming Nazirs because they could end it by bringing a korban. Okay, so now let's read a little bit more. If you want, I could say, Afilatema Rabbi Yehuda. So that was an idea that saying Rabbi Meir, who normally says Nedarim are no good, would allow for the positive phenomenon of a Nidava. Now we're going to wind up saying essentially the same about Rabbi Yehuda. That maybe Rabbi Meir would say both Neder and Nidava is no good. And what we've said until now for Rabbi Meir, we're going to say for Rabbi Yehuda. Here, Rabbi Yehuda, when does Rabbi Yehuda say it's good, Tov Asher Tidova to Shalem, it doesn't really mean making a Neder is good. It really means Benidava, Beneder Lo Kamar. Okay, when he really says it's good to do it and fulfill it, he really didn't mean through making a neder. Neder was always no good. He really meant it's good to make a nedava. So the Gemara says, "Zaktani told me no der mekayim." What do you mean? It says, Rabbi Yehuda says, the best is to make a neder and fulfill it. It seems like he's okay with making a neder. The Gemara says, "No, Tani no devu mekayim." All right, which is certainly not shot at all of Rabbi Yehuda. Okay. So Ma'ishna Noder Delo. So now we're just going to repeat what we said before, except with a slightly different variation. So basically, everything we said until now for Rabbi Meir, we're going to say for Rabbi Yehuda. When Rabbi Yehuda says it's a good phenomenon, he meant the Nadav is a good phenomenon. A Neder is not a good phenomenon. So now the Gemara says, so what's the difference? Ma'ishna Noder Delo Dilma Ati Baludei Takala. Because it'll lead to to stumbling. So Nadavanami Dilma Ati Baludei Takala. So before, the benefit of this approach is before we had to quote other people, Shimon HaTzadik, Hillel HaZaken. Here we have actual statements of Rabbi Yehuda that actually speak exactly to this point. So Rabbi Yehuda Taime, the Amar Rabbi Yehuda goes according to this, and he says, maybe keep Satola Azara, a person can bring his little lamb to the Azara, Umakdisha, and sanctifies it there, V'somach lev v'shokta. So exactly what we said before is what Hillel HaZaken used to do. Here we have Rabbi Yehuda saying it. Okay, so we're saying the same thing we said before, except here Rabbi Yehuda says some of these statements personally. All right, so a neder is bad, a nedava is good. Rereading Rabbi Yehuda in that debate, and therefore, what is an example of a nedava that would be good, that would be unproblematic? Making a nedava right at the door of the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, so now the Gemara says like this. Okay, Tenech nedava de korbanot. That's a korban. Nidava and Nazir is Michael. How about a Nazir? Where do you have that as a positive, uncomplicated religious phenomenon? Rabbi Yehuda L'Taimeh, he goes according to his reasoning. Titania. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Chasidim Arishonim hayu mitavim lahavi korban chata. The great, the righteous ones wanted to bring all types of korbanot to the Beis HaMikdash, but they had a little bit of a problem, which was that how do you bring a chatos without sinning? And they didn't want to sin. So what would they do would be, but since God would never cause them to sin unintentionally, because you certainly could even intentionally sin, because then you wouldn't bring the chatas either. The only way you bring the chatas is unintentional. So we can't exactly, and God won't let that happen. What are they going to do? So Mayosim, what would they do? They would make themselves a Nazir, not because they wanted to become a Nazir. Nazir remains a complicated religious phenomenon. They made themselves a Nazir so that they could bring the korban chatas. Anyway, so that's why somebody became a Nazir, then that would be an example of a nidava. All right, in a way, it's sort of also harkens to the idea of nidava as a freely given korban, right? Because then it sort of ultimately relates to their ability to give this type of a korban. Okay, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, Lo nidru b'nazir ela lo nidru b'nazir. No, they wouldn't do that. Ela harotzel havi ola. Here's what they would do. If a guy wanted to bring, let me maybe you'd make a nedava, not a neder again. Notice a nedava. Shlamim, maybe shlamim. You can do that by a nedava, free will. Toda, the arba'a minei lachma, the toda and the 4 loaves of bread. Mitnadevu maybe you do a nedava. Aval b'nezirut lo hitnadvu. But even though they would never be able to bring the chatos, they nevertheless would not make themselves into a nazir. Why not? Because even if you haven't actually sinned by a nazir, you'll still be called a sinner. Will atone for him for that he sinned against the soul. Now in the psukim, that actually relates to somebody who became tamei, hitia tamei la nafesh. Okay, but that is learned by at least some by here, Rabbi Shimon to say that there's actually always a bad part of the phenomenon of nizirut. I've been focusing on the fact that it sort of like separates you out of society, and you might be doing it for a type of like a yuhara, for a type of a self-serving religious motivation. But the Asher Chatal Nefesh points out to the other part that gets emphasized by the nizirut, which is the asceticism aspect of it, and that you actually are depriving yourself. You can say you're depriving yourself also of being a member of society, right? This is actually because sort of denying yourself the normal types of parts of an existence, which is a sort of societal, being embedded in society and being able to sort of have pleasure from this world, and therefore that's the way in which that is intrinsically a negative religious phenomenon. It gets to the same question the Gemara has about taking a tanis. Is somebing who's Yoshei Batanis Nikra Chote or Nikra Kadosh, which can get to the question of not just motivation, but of a real profound religious question, right? How much do we have the sense of this, body-soul dualism, and the ideal is to separate physically from this world and totally focus on God and deny oneself of the physical pleasures, and any sort of connection to this world is a concession. By and large, we sort of see that much more as a Christian type of a religious ideal, whereas Judaism is much more of an embodied religion, and we don't see ourselves like at war with the physical world. Okay, but that is not also black and white. I mean, the Rambam in his Parish Mishnayos, speaks at length, and he says that the whole approach of Hasidei Ashkenaz, of asceticism and self-denial, he basically says they learned it all from the Christians. It's it's all like a negative religious phenomenon. Lo dayecha ma shasarta lecha Torah, and that's very unhealthy. But we've always had both of those impulses, and therefore you have this debate: is being in a tanis kadosh or is being in a tanis a chotei? Is a nazir kadosh or is a nazir a chotei? Okay, so Rabbi Shimon says the nazir is always an element, even regardless of motivation. There's always this element that separating yourself from this world is a chotei, and therefore he says they would never accept it upon themselves. Okay, so we'll wrap this up tomorrow, but with this interesting debate about the real nature of these religious phenomenon of neder, nazirus, ta'anit, and so on.
It reminds me of that joke that